Have you ever felt like you were carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, yet no one around you could see the battle raging inside? You know that feeling when you wake up in the morning, put on a smile, and face the day as if everything is fine. But deep down, you're fighting wars that have no witnesses, bearing burdens that have no names. I want you to pause for just a moment and consider this. What if I told you that your presence here, right now, watching this video, is not a coincidence? What if every click, every scroll, every seemingly random choice that led you to this exact moment was orchestrated by something far greater than chance? Because here's the truth that most people never discover. There are no accidents in the universe, only appointments, divine appointments. Now, let me ask you something personal. How many times have you shown up when you barely had the strength? How many mornings have you opened your eyes feeling completely depleted, yet somehow found the courage to put one foot in front of the other? You see, most people are walking through life wearing masks, smiling on the outside while their hearts are quietly breaking on the inside. And perhaps you're one of them. Perhaps you've been fighting battles so private, so internal, that even your closest friends have no idea what you're truly going through. Has this ever happened to you? You're surrounded by people, yet you feel completely alone. You're celebrating victories on the surface while nursing wounds that nobody sees. You're achieving, moving, progressing. But inside, there's a storm that never seems to calm. And the most exhausting part? Pretending that everything is okay when it's not. Here's what I've discovered through years of studying spiritual principles and the teachings of great minds, like Joseph Murphy. Your struggles are not punishments. They're not evidence that you've done something wrong or that the universe has forgotten about you. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you see your current circumstances. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The invisible wars you've been fighting, the ones that drain you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, they serve a purpose far beyond what you can see right now. Every tear you've cried in secret, every night you've laid awake wondering when things would change, every moment you've questioned whether you could keep going, all of it has been shaping something inside you that the world desperately needs. You weren't randomly selected for these challenges. You were specifically chosen. And the very fact that you're still here, still standing, still searching for answers, proves something profound about who you are and what you're capable of becoming. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where everything begins to shift. There's something happening in your life right now that you might not fully recognize yet, but your spirit knows. It's that subtle shift you've been feeling, like something heavy that's been pressing down on your chest for months, maybe even years, is finally beginning to lift. You wake up one morning, and the air feels different. Not dramatically different, but there's a lightness you can't quite explain. The storm that's been raging around you, the one that kept you up at night replaying the same painful scenarios over and over in your mind, has begun to quiet down. Joseph Murphy taught us about the power of the subconscious mind and how our internal state creates our external reality. But what he also understood, and what many people miss, is that there are seasons in life, spiritual, seasons that operate beyond our logical understanding. And just as naturally as winter gives way to spring, there comes a moment when the universe declares that your season of struggle has served its purpose. That moment is now. Think about it for a second. How many times have you felt like you were stuck in a loop? The same issues showing up in different forms. The same type of relationships that start with promise but end in disappointment. The same financial setbacks just when you thought you were finally getting ahead. The same confusion about your purpose, your path, your next move. It's exhausting, isn't it? And the most frustrating part is that you've been doing the inner work. You've been praying, meditating, affirming, visualizing, all the things you're supposed to do. Yet the breakthrough seemed perpetually out of reach. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Those cycles weren't evidence of your failure. They were assignments. Each repetition was refining something within you, stripping away layers of old programming, dissolving patterns that were inherited rather than chosen. The confusion you experienced wasn't a sign that you were lost. It was the necessary fog that precedes clarity. And the waiting, oh, the endless waiting, that wasn't the universe ignoring you. It was divine timing, orchestrating circumstances behind the scenes that your human perspective couldn't possibly comprehend. Now, I want to go even deeper into this truth because understanding this will completely shift your mindset about where you are right now. That oppressive atmosphere you've been carrying, that feeling like you're constantly one step away from peace, one decision away from getting it right, one breakthrough away from finally being happy. It's been broken. Not because you suddenly became perfect or figured everything out, but because the lesson is complete. The chapter has closed. You've graduated from that particular classroom of experience, and whether you consciously realize it or not, you're already standing at the threshold of something entirely new. The energy around you has fundamentally changed, and with it comes a divine ease that doesn't require force or struggle to maintain. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. This is about a genuine spiritual shift in the atmosphere of your life, a transition from survival mode into a space where things begin to flow rather than fight you at every turn. Write in the comments, "The storm is over," if you're feeling this shift in your own life right now. You know what nobody tells you about transformation? It rarely looks glamorous while it's happening. In fact, most of the time it feels like you're being put through some kind of spiritual boot camp where everyone else seems to be on vacation. You look around and see people getting promotions, finding love, buying houses, launching businesses, and you're still here, still working on yourself, still waiting for your moment. And if you're honest, there have been times when you've wondered if maybe you did something wrong, maybe you missed a sign, maybe you're being punished for past mistakes. But here's the revelation that changes everything. What looked like abandonment was actually selection. The doors that stayed closed for you weren't rejections, they were redirections. Every opportunity that went to someone else, every relationship that didn't work out, every plan that fell apart at the last minute, those weren't failures. They were filters. You were being refined in ways that the average person never experiences because you're not being prepared for an average life. If this resonated with you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. This is a space for people who are ready to transform and grow spiritually. There's so much more I want to share with you. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply. He knew that the subconscious mind doesn't operate on our timeline or our logic. It's working with information and patterns we can't consciously access, orchestrating events that only make sense when you look back from a higher vantage point. While you were in the darkness, frustrated that nothing seemed to be moving, everything was actually happening beneath the surface. Seeds were germinating, connections were being made, old structures were being dismantled so new ones could be built on a stronger foundation. Think about the journey you've been on, the setbacks that seemed random, the delays that felt cruel, the moments when you were so close to something you wanted, only to have it slip away at the last second. What if I told you that every single one of those experiences was meticulously designed to develop something within you that couldn't be cultivated any other way? Patience, resilience, discernment, faith. These aren't qualities you can learn from a book or a seminar. They're forged in the fire of lived experience, in the pressure of situations that force you to dig deeper than you ever thought possible. The truth is, you weren't being punished during those difficult seasons. You were being prepared. And the preparation had to match the magnitude of what's coming. You can't carry a heavyweight blessing with a lightweight character. You can't steward a massive opportunity with a limited mindset. The universe wasn't keeping things from you. It was keeping you in development until you were genuinely ready to handle what you've been asking for without destroying yourself in the process. Now here's where the impact of all this becomes crystal clear. Every test you passed, even the ones you thought you failed, was adding another layer of strength to your foundation. Every person who walked away created space for the right people to enter. Every closed door was protecting you from a path that would have led you away from your true purpose. And all of that development, all of that refining, it's complete now. The training season is over. You've graduated from that particular phase of growth, and what's ahead requires a different version of you, the version you've become through all of this. Drop a comment and write, "I was being prepared, not punished," if this resonates with your journey. There's a profound truth that most people never grasp. Nothing you've been through was wasted. Not a single tear. Not one sleepless night. Not any of those moments when your heart felt like it was being shredded into pieces. Every ounce of pain you've experienced has been watering something deep within you, your purpose. And I know that sounds almost impossible to believe when you're in the middle of suffering, when it feels like the universe is just piling on more than you can handle. But Joseph Murphy taught us that the subconscious mind is always working toward wholeness, always moving us toward our highest good, even when the path looks nothing like what we expected. Think about the heartbreaks you've endured, the relationships that ended, the friendships that dissolved, the betrayals that cut deep. In those moments, you probably wondered what you did to deserve such pain. But here's the hidden revelation. Each of those experiences was softening your heart in ways that success never could. You were being given the gift of compassion, the kind that can only come from truly understanding what it means to hurt. And that compassion, that's not just for your own healing. That's the foundation of your calling. You can't lead people out of darkness if you've never walked through it yourself. You can't offer genuine hope to the broken if you've never been shattered and rebuilt. And those disappointments that seemed to derail your entire life plan, they weren't setbacks, they were course corrections. Every door that slammed shut, every opportunity that evaporated, every dream that died, they were clearing mechanisms. The universe was removing distractions, relationships, and pathways that couldn't follow you into your next level of existence, because where you're going requires a different energy, a different focus, a different version of you, and some things, no matter how much you love them, simply weren't designed to make that journey with you. Now I want you to understand something that most people never recognize about their own story. The pressure you've been under wasn't random. Diamonds don't form on the surface where everything is comfortable and easy. They're created deep underground, under intense heat and pressure, over long periods of time. Gold doesn't shine in its raw state. It has to go through the refiner's fire to burn away the impurities. And you've been in that fire. You've been under that pressure, not because you're cursed, but because you're chosen. Because what you carry inside you is extraordinary, and extraordinary things require extraordinary preparation. The people who are destined to make the greatest impact often walk the hardest roads. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Your struggles weren't evidence that you were on the wrong path. They were proof that you were on exactly the right one. The universe doesn't invest this much time and energy refining someone who's meant for an ordinary existence. The depth of your trials is directly proportional to the height of your calling, and every decision you made to keep going, to not give up, to push through one more day, those were the moments when you were being transform from coal into diamond, from raw ore into pure gold. Leave a comment saying, "I'm being refined." if you're starting to see your struggles in a completely new light. Let me tell you something that might sting at first, but will ultimately set you free. Those people who left your life, the ones you thought would be there forever, the friends who slowly drifted away, the romantic partner who couldn't seem to meet you where you were growing, the family members who suddenly felt like strangers. Their departure wasn't the tragedy you thought it was. It was elevation disguised as loss. Because the truth is, not everyone is meant to go where you're going. And that's not a judgment on them or on you. It's just the reality of growth. Joseph Murphy spoke often about the law of attraction and how our inner state draws certain experiences and people to us. But what he also understood, and what many teachers don't emphasize enough, is that as you evolve, your energetic frequency changes. And when your frequency shifts, the people and environments that resonated with the old you suddenly feel misaligned with the new you. That friend who used to feel like home now feels draining. That relationship that once brought joy now brings tension. That job that once excited you now feels suffocating, and you might blame yourself, wondering why you can't just be grateful, why you can't make it work like you used to. But here's the hidden truth behind all of this. Your next level requires lighter baggage. Emotionally, spiritually, energetically, you can't carry the weight of relationships that no longer serve your growth and expect to soar. The universe isn't cruel when it removes people from your path. It's strategic. It's making space for connections that match who you're becoming, not who you used to be. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels like abandonment. Yes, there are nights when you miss what was, even when you know it wasn't right anymore. But that pain is the price of transformation, and it's a price worth paying. If this video spoke to your spirit, show me by hitting that like button. It tells me we're connected and that this message landed where it needed to. Now let's talk about something that nobody prepares you for when they tell you you're chosen, you're special, you're destined for greatness. They don't tell you that most of the time it doesn't feel glamorous at all. In fact, it often feels like the opposite. It feels like rejection when doors close in your face. It feels like isolation when you're called to walk a path that nobody around you understands. It feels like confusion when you're doing everything right, but nothing seems to be working. And the divine silence? That's perhaps the hardest part. You pray with your whole heart, you ask for guidance, you beg for a sign, and you get nothing. Just silence. Just waiting. Just the endless stretching of faith that feels like it might snap at any moment. But somehow, you keep going. Somewhere deep inside, beneath all the doubt and exhaustion, there's this tiny flame that refuses to go out. A whisper that says, "Not yet. Hold on just a little longer." And you do. Not because you're superhuman, but because something within you knows that this struggle has meaning, that this season has purpose, that the breakthrough you can't yet see is already forming in the invisible realm, waiting for the perfect moment to manifest in your reality. Type, "I'm still holding on" in the comments if you've felt this divine silence but refused to quit. Here's something remarkable that's already happening in your life, even if you haven't fully noticed it yet. There are situations, people, and circumstances that used to absolutely wreck you, and now they barely register. That comment someone makes that would have sent you spiraling into self-doubt for weeks. You hear it now and it just bounces off. That type of person who used to trigger all your insecurities and old wounds. You encounter them and feel nothing but calm detachment. That fear that used to paralyze you and keep you stuck. It still exists somewhere in the background, but it no longer controls your decisions. This isn't about pretending you're not affected or putting on a brave face. This is genuine transformation happening at a cellular level. The old version of you would have completely collapsed under the weight of what you're now handling with grace. And you might not even realize how far you've come. Because growth happens so gradually that we often don't recognize it until we look back and see the distance we've traveled. But take a moment right now and think about who you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Think about the things that devastated that person. And now look at how you handle those same situations today. There's been a profound shift, hasn't there? Joseph Murphy always emphasized that true change happens in the subconscious mind. And when that inner programming shifts, your entire external reality must follow. What you're experiencing is the evidence that deep inner work has been completed. The healing you've been seeking, praying for, working toward, it's already happened. You're already different. You're already operating from a higher level of consciousness. The peaceful strength you now carry wasn't there before. It's new, it's earned, it's real. And here's what this really means on a spiritual level. When the divine declares something finished, it's finished. Not almost done, not 90% complete, finished. The suffering cycle you've been trapped in, the one that kept repeating with different characters but the same painful storyline, has been broken. You've passed the test, you've learned the lesson, you've graduated. And graduation means you're not going back to that classroom, you're not repeating that grade. The chapter has closed completely, and there's no possibility of returning to those old patterns because you've fundamentally changed who you are. This is what people don't understand about spiritual evolution. It's not about avoiding problems or never feeling pain again. It's about reaching a level of consciousness where the same situations that once destroyed you can no longer touch your peace. You've built an inner foundation so solid that external storms can rage all they want, but they can't shake you the way they used to. And that foundation wasn't built in a day. It was constructed through every trial you endured, every tear you cried, every moment you chose to keep going when quitting would have been easier. Now, what becomes possible from this place of completion is something entirely different from anything you've experienced before. Because when you're no longer running from your past or trying to heal your wounds or stuck in survival mode, you finally have the energy and clarity to actually create the life you've been dreaming about. Write, "I've graduated" in the comments if you can feel that you've truly moved beyond an old pattern that used to control you. Let's talk about something that doesn't get acknowledged enough: the soul exhaustion. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, but that deep, bone-weary fatigue that comes from carrying invisible weights for too long. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Those nights when you cried and couldn't even explain why. Not because something specific happened that day, but because everything from the past month, the past year, the past decade just came crashing down all at once. And those mornings when you woke up already depleted, when the thought of putting on that brave face and pretending everything was fine felt like climbing a mountain you simply didn't have the strength for anymore. There were moments, maybe more than you'd like to admit, when you genuinely didn't know how much longer you could keep going. Not in a dramatic way, but in that quiet, desperate way where you're just trying to make it. Through one more hour, one more conversation, one more responsibility, you were running on fumes, holding yourself together with willpower and prayers, wondering when the breaking point would finally come. And yet somehow, grace showed up. Not always in the way you wanted or expected, but in small whispers of encouragement that said, "Just one more step, just today, just this moment." And you took that step, and then another, and another, until days became weeks, and weeks became months. And here you are, still standing. That exhaustion wasn't weakness. It was evidence of how hard you've been fighting, how much you've been carrying, how deeply you've been feeling everything while trying to function normally in a world that doesn't pause for healing. But here's what I need you to understand about what's coming next. Your breakthrough, your elevation, your moment of arrival. It's not going to look like you think it will. We've been conditioned by social media and highlight reels to expect transformation to be loud and public. We think success means everyone suddenly seeing our value, opportunities knocking down our door with fanfare, life changing in obvious dramatic ways that make great stories. But real elevation, the kind that lasts, the kind that's actually aligned with your soul rather than your ego, it happens quietly. It unfolds subtly. You won't always be able to pinpoint the exact moment things shifted, but one day you'll look around and realize everything is different. People who overlooked you, who dismissed your potential or took you for granted, they'll suddenly feel drawn back into your orbit. Not because you're chasing them or trying to prove anything, but because your energy has changed and they can feel it, even if they can't articulate it. Opportunities that ghosted you, that seemed to evaporate right when you needed them most, they'll circle back around. But this time the dynamic is completely different. You won't be desperately pursuing them. You won't be anxious or grasping. They'll pursue you. They'll come to you naturally because you're finally vibrating at the frequency of someone who's ready to receive, rather than someone who's still chasing out of lack. Drop a comment saying, "I'm ready to receive." If you can feel this shift happening in your own life right now, there are signs appearing in your life right now, and most people miss them completely because they're looking for the big, dramatic breakthrough. But transformation rarely announces itself with trumpets and fireworks. It shows up in the small, almost imperceptible shifts that you might dismiss as coincidence or good luck. Like that moment when you're stuck in traffic, something that normally would have sent you into a spiral of frustration and anxiety, and instead you just breathe and feel strangely at peace. Or when you're doing something completely ordinary, making coffee, walking to your car, washing dishes, and suddenly you feel this unexpected surge of joy for no apparent reason. These aren't random moments, they're evidence that something fundamental has shifted in your internal world. Pay attention to the conversations that seem to find you at exactly the right time. You run into someone you haven't seen in months, and they say something that answers a question you were just wrestling with. You overhear a stranger talking about something that's directly related to a decision you need to make. You open a book to a random page, and the first sentence you read feels like it was written specifically for your situation. Joseph Murphy called this the intelligence of the subconscious mind, orchestrating synchronicities. But you can also call it divine timing, universal alignment, or simply grace. Whatever name you give it, the point is that these aren't accidents. They're breadcrumbs marking the trail of your new season. And here's what makes this phase so powerful. The major changes haven't even fully manifested yet, but the energy of them is already present. You're living in the space between what was and what's coming. And if you're paying attention, you can feel the shift happening in real time. It's like standing on a beach at dawn. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the sky is already changing color, and you know beyond any doubt that daylight is inevitable. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine waking up one morning and the first thing you notice is that your chest doesn't feel heavy anymore. That constant low-grade anxiety that's been your background noise for so long, it's just gone. You lie there for a moment, almost suspicious, waiting for the familiar weight to return, but it doesn't. Your spirit feels lighter in a way you can't quite describe, but absolutely can feel. And as you move through your day, you start noticing other things too. That fear that used to dominate your decision-making, the one that kept you playing small and safe, it's still there somewhere, but it doesn't have teeth anymore. It can't control you the way it used to. The future that felt like this massive, overwhelming uncertainty now looks like an adventure waiting to unfold. Not because everything is suddenly perfect or figured out, but because something inside you has fundamentally changed. You're not approaching life from a place of dread anymore. You're approaching it from curiosity, from possibility, from a quiet confidence that you can handle whatever comes. This is the confirmation that the old patterns really have passed away. not just temporarily suppressed or managed, but genuinely dissolved. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to force this or make it happen. It's already happening. You're already in it. Write, "I feel lighter" in the comments if you're experiencing this shift in your own spirit right now. Let me tell you something that will completely reframe every difficult moment you've ever experienced. None of it was random, not the heartbreak that made you question if you'd ever feel whole again. Not the financial struggle that kept you up at night, wondering how you'd make it through. Not the loss that left a hole in your life you thought could never be filled. Not the confusion that made you doubt every decision you'd ever made. And certainly not the self-doubt that whispered you weren't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough to have what you desired. Every single one of those experiences was refining you for something specific. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind is always working toward our greater good, even when circumstances seem to contradict that. But what many people misunderstand is that greater good doesn't always mean comfort or ease. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means being shaped into someone capable of carrying weight that others can't. Because here's the distinction that changes everything. You're not being prepared to chase dreams. You're being prepared to carry an assignment. And those are two fundamentally different things. Dreams are about you, your happiness, your success, your fulfillment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But assignments are about impact. They're about becoming a light in spaces where other people are still stumbling in darkness. They're about taking everything you've learned through your pain and using it as a map to guide others through theirs. You can't do that with theory or second-hand knowledge. You can only do it with the wisdom that comes from lived experience, from having been broken and rebuilt, from knowing what it feels like to lose everything and still find reasons to hope. This is why chosen ones often walk the hardest paths, not as punishment, but as preparation for the assignment they'll eventually carry. And if you're watching this right now, if every word I'm saying is resonating in your chest like a bell being struck, then this message is your confirmation. The spiritual warfare you've been fighting, the one that made you feel like you were battling invisible forces that nobody else could see, it's ended. Those doors that stayed locked no matter how hard you knocked, no matter how qualified you were, no matter how desperately you needed them to open, they're open now, or better ones are about to appear. And those people who left, the ones whose absence felt like abandonment, they created space for connections that are actually aligned with where you're going, not where you've been. Space for relationships built on the foundation of who you're becoming, not who you used to be. The confusion that kept you second-guessing every move, doubting your intuition, wondering if you were on the right path, it's clearing. And in its place is coming a revelation, a deep understanding of why everything had to unfold exactly as it did. Not someday when you look back, but right now, in this present moment. The pieces are starting to fit together in a way that finally makes sense. Type, "This is my confirmation," if you feel like this message found you at exactly the right moment. You know what nobody warns you about when the battle finally ends? The numbness. The exhaustion that doesn't lift immediately just because the war is over. You'd think that once the struggle stops, you'd instantly feel relief, joy, celebration. But sometimes you just feel empty. Like you've been running on adrenaline for so long that when it finally drains away, you're not sure what to do with yourself. And if that's where you are right now, I need you to hear this. That's completely normal. That's not evidence that something's wrong with you or that you didn't really win. That's just what happens when a warrior finally gets to rest. Healing after intense spiritual battle takes time. Your nervous system has been in overdrive. Your emotions have been on high alert. Your mind has been strategizing and surviving and pushing through for longer than you probably even realize. And now that the threat has passed, your entire being needs to recalibrate. Think of it like a soldier coming home from deployment. The war might be over, but the adjustment to peacetime doesn't happen overnight. Give yourself permission to feel however you feel without judging it. If you're tired, rest. If you're numb, just be numb for a while. If peace feels strange and unfamiliar, that's because it is. You've been in combat mode for so long that calm feels foreign, almost suspicious. But here's what's actually happening beneath that exhaustion and numbness. You're integrating everything you've learned. Your subconscious is processing all the experiences, extracting the wisdom, rewiring old patterns, and building new neural pathways. This isn't stagnation, this is transformation at the deepest level, and it requires downtime, it requires stillness. It requires you to stop pushing for just a moment and let your system catch up to where you are. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you've been climbing a mountain for years, not a leisurely hike with marked trails and rest stops, but a brutal, exhausting ascent where every step required effort, where you couldn't see the top, where you questioned 1,000 times whether you should just turn back, but you didn't. You kept climbing, and now, for the first time in what feels like forever, you've reached the summit. You're standing at the peak, and everything looks completely different from up here. The air is clearer. You can breathe deeper. That heaviness that pressed on your chest for so long has lifted, and you didn't even notice the exact moment it happened. The silence that used to feel lonely and isolating now feels peaceful, almost sacred. It's not the silence of abandonment anymore. It's the silence of completion, of arrival, of having made it through something you weren't sure you'd survive. And looking back down the mountain at the path you climbed, you can finally see why certain routes were blocked, why some shortcuts would have led to dead ends, why the journey had to be exactly as hard as it was. This vantage point changes everything about how you see your story. What looked like detours were actually redirections. What felt like setbacks were actually setups, and the storm that raged around you for so long. It's definitively behind you now, sitting in the valleys below while you stand in the clear air of higher ground. Leave a comment saying, "I made it to the top." If you can feel yourself standing at this new vantage point in your life, there's something you've probably noticed but haven't fully acknowledged yet. Your intuition has sharpened to a level you've never experienced before. It's not dramatic or mystical, it's subtle but undeniable. You meet someone new, and within minutes, without them saying or doing anything obviously wrong, you just know whether they're aligned with your path or not. An opportunity presents itself, and instead of agonizing over pros and cons lists for weeks, you feel an immediate yes or no in your gut. A situation unfolds, and you can sense the energy behind it before anyone else sees what's really happening. This isn't luck or coincidence. This is what happens when you've been through enough fire to burn away the noise, the false beliefs, the conditioning that kept you second-guessing yourself. Joseph Murphy spoke extensively about trusting the wisdom of the subconscious mind, and what you're experiencing now is direct access to that wisdom. You're no longer operating from fear or desperation. You're no longer chasing outcomes or trying to force things to work. You've shifted into a completely different energy, one of attraction rather than pursuit, one of trust rather than panic. And that shift is the clearest sign of a soul that's been refined through intense pressure and emerged stronger, wiser, more aligned. But here's what might be the most profound change of all. Look at who you've become. Seriously, take a moment and compare the person you are today to who you were just a few years ago. The old version of you, the one who apologized for existing, who made yourself smaller to make others comfortable, who gave and gave until there was nothing left, who overthought every decision into paralysis. That person doesn't exist anymore. They've been completely transformed, not through force or willpower, but through the natural process of evolution that happens when you Stop abandoning yourself for the sake of keeping peace with others. You've become grounded in a way that can't be shaken by external chaos. You've become aware of patterns and dynamics that you used to be blind to. And most importantly, you've become still. Not passive or defeated, but truly still. You understand now that silence is often the most powerful response, that not every question deserves an answer, that not every invitation deserves a yes, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people, places, and situations that cost you your peace, even when walking away feels uncomfortable or makes you look like the bad guy in someone else's story. This transformation isn't something you consciously tried to create. It happened because you survived things that were meant to break you, but instead broke you open. You're not the same person anymore, and there's no going back. The old patterns won't fit. The old tolerance for dysfunction won't return. The old version of you who accepted crumbs and called it a feast has been replaced by someone who knows their worth and won't negotiate it for anyone's approval or comfort. And what's remarkable is that this new version of you doesn't need to announce itself or prove anything. The energy speaks for itself. People feel the difference even when they can't articulate what changed. Right, I don't recognize my old self. If you've experienced this complete identity transformation, here's the truth that most people never grasp about blessings. They don't come when you desperately need them. They come when you're finally ready to steward them properly. Think about it. How many times in your past did you get exactly what you thought you wanted, only to watch it fall apart in your hands? How many opportunities did you sabotage without even realizing it because some part of you didn't believe you deserved them? How many relationships imploded because you were still operating from wounds instead of wholeness? That wasn't the universe being cruel. That was divine protection, keeping certain things away from you until you developed the capacity to handle them without destroying yourself or the blessing in the process. But now is different. The version of you that exists today has been tested, refined, and proven. You've demonstrated through your journey that you won't take blessings for granted. You won't self-destruct the moment things start going well. You won't let fear or unworthiness talk you out of what's meant for you. The healed version of you knows how to nurture what comes, how to protect it from the chaos of old patterns, how to expand it with genuine gratitude instead of the anxiety that comes from feeling like you don't deserve good things. This is why divine forces can finally release you into your next chapter, not because you're perfect, but because you're ready. And when I say the storm is over, when I tell you this season has ended, I need you to understand what that really means. It's not an ending in the tragic sense. It's not loss, even though it might have felt like loss when it was happening. It's clearing. It's the universe making space for what's actually meant for you by removing what was only ever meant to be temporary. Those doors that closed in your face, they had to close so the right ones could open. If they'd stayed open, you would have walked through them into a life that looked good on the surface but would have ultimately limited you, kept you small, prevented you from becoming who you're meant to be. Some things in your life had to die, not because they were bad, but because they'd served their purpose, and there was no room for new growth as long as they remained. It's like a tree in autumn letting go of leaves. The tree isn't dying, it's preparing for a new season of growth. And what falls away creates the fertile ground for what comes next. This is transformation at its most fundamental level. Not addition, but metamorphosis. The caterpillar doesn't add wings. It dissolves completely in the cocoon and emerges as something entirely new. So when you look at what's ended, the relationships, the jobs, the dreams that didn't materialize the way you planned, don't see them as failures or tragedies. See them as the necessary clearing that had to happen so your real life could begin. Because what's coming isn't just better than what was. It's aligned in a way that nothing before could have. Been because you weren't this version of yourself yet. You weren't ready, but now you are. Type, I'm ready for what's next, if you can feel this transition happening in your life right now. Now, I need to be honest with you about something that's going to happen. Just because the storm has ended doesn't mean you won't occasionally hear thunder in the distance. The adversary, whether you call it your ego, your trauma responses, or spiritual opposition, will test your newfound peace. It will wait until you're finally feeling stable, finally breathing easy, and then it will try to pull you back into old patterns. Your mind will suddenly replay that painful memory you thought you'd processed. That familiar anxiety will try to creep back in. That voice of self-doubt will whisper that this peace is temporary, that you're about to lose it all again, that you should brace yourself for the next disaster. And here's where your power lies. You have to actively speak against it. Not just think positive thoughts or try to ignore it, but actually use your voice. When that old pain pattern tries to replay, you say out loud, "No, that's finished." When the fear tries to convince you that history is about to repeat itself, you declare, "That cycle is broken." This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. This is about exercising the creative power of your words to reinforce the spiritual freedom you've earned. Joseph Murphy taught extensively about the power of spoken affirmations, and this is that principle in action. Your words aren't just describing your reality, they're creating it, shaping it, solidifying it. Because here's what the adversary is counting on, that you'll passively accept whatever thoughts and feelings show up without questioning their authority. But you're not passive anymore. You're not a victim of your own mind. You've learned something profound through all you've been through, something that changes everything about how you navigate life from this point forward. You've learned that surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat or accepting whatever life throws at you with resignation. True surrender means giving over control to forces greater than yourself, trusting that there's an intelligence at work beyond what your limited human perspective can comprehend. This is the wisdom that's been anointed on you through your journey. You understand now that trying to control every outcome, micromanage every detail, force every door open through sheer willpower, that's not strength. That's fear masquerading as action. Real strength is knowing when to step back and let divine power do what only it can do. And when you surrender in this way, something miraculous happens. Everything that was working against you starts working for your benefit. The obstacles become opportunities. The setbacks become setups. The losses create space for gains you never imagined. This isn't magical thinking or naive optimism. This is the practical application of spiritual law. When you stop fighting against the current and instead align yourself with it, you discover that the current was always trying to take you somewhere better than where you thought you needed to go. Your job isn't to know every step of the journey. Your job is to trust the one guiding you and to speak life over your circumstances even when they don't look like what you expected. Write, "I trust the process" in the comments if you've experienced this shift from control to surrender. There's a shift happening right now that you need to recognize and claim. You've entered your harvest season, not the season of planting, not the season of watering, not even the season of waiting anymore. Harvest. And I know what you might be thinking, but I don't see any massive results yet. I don't see the big breakthrough. That's because harvest doesn't always announce itself with dramatic fanfare. It unfolds one miracle at a time, one small blessing after another, until you look back and realize your entire landscape has changed. The storm's passing doesn't mean everything transforms overnight. It means the conditions are now perfect for growth, for abundance, for the reaping of everything you've been sowing through your faithfulness during the dark seasons. Your focus now shifts from surviving to observing, from fighting to receiving, from wondering if anything will ever change to watching in real time as divine forces orchestrate circumstances, connections, and opportunities that you couldn't have manufactured through your own effort. This is the season where you get to witness what happens when you've done your part, and now the universe does its part. And trust me, what's about to unfold will exceed anything you could have strategized or manipulated into existence on your own. But to understand why harvest is even possible, you have to look back at the pruning. Every gardener knows that pruning isn't punishment, it's preparation. You cut away the dead branches, the diseased leaves, the growth that's consuming resources but producing nothing so that the healthy parts of the plant can thrive. And that's exactly what's been happening in your life. You've been pruned, stripped down. Parts of your life that you thought were essential were cut away, and it hurt. It felt like loss. It felt like everything was being taken from you. But it wasn't destruction. It was creation of space. Space. For the life you were always meant to live, not the life you settled for. Space for relationships built on reciprocity, not codependence. Space for work that fulfills your purpose, not just pays your bills. Space for peace that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances. Space for joy that isn't contingent on other people's approval. All those limitations that held you back, the toxic patterns, the limiting beliefs, the people who drained your energy, the obligations that weren't really yours to carry. They had to be removed so your true life could emerge. And here's the powerful truth about this process. After every pruning comes abundant fruit. After every test comes a testimony that will help someone else survive their own dark season. You weren't stripped down to stay empty. You were emptied so you could be filled with something better, something aligned, something that actually fits who you've become. The freedom you're stepping into isn't just freedom from pain. It's freedom to finally live authentically, powerfully, purposefully. Comment, "My harvest is here," if you can feel this season of reaping beginning in your own life. Let me paint a picture for you. You've been wandering through wilderness for so long that you almost forgot what the destination was supposed to feel like. You adapted to survival mode so completely that peace became this abstract concept. Something other people talked about, but you couldn't quite remember experiencing yourself. Every day was about getting through, about holding on to faith even when you couldn't see or feel any evidence that it was working. You learned to survive on nothing but trust, nothing but the faint whisper that kept saying, "Keep going, it's not over yet." And you did. You kept walking through that wilderness even when every logical part of your mind screamed that you were lost, that there was no way out, that maybe this barren landscape was just your reality now. But here's what you couldn't see while you were in. It the same hand that guided you through every valley, every dark night, every moment when you thought you couldn't take another step. That hand never let go. And it's that same hand that's now leading you out of the wilderness and into your promised land. Not a fantasy land where nothing ever goes wrong, but a place of genuine peace that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances. A place of joy that comes from deep within rather than external validation. A place of divine knowing where you're so connected to your purpose and path that confusion can't shake you the way it used to. This transition from wilderness to promised land isn't just about geography or circumstances. It's about consciousness. It's about finally being able to rest in the knowing that you're guided, protected, and exactly where you need to be. And what makes this moment even more powerful is what's about to be restored to you. Now, when I talk about restoration, I need you to understand something crucial. What's coming back isn't going to look like what you lost. Divine forces don't just give you back the same thing that didn't work the first time. They restore in elevated form. That relationship you mourned, the one you thought was your soulmate connection. It's being replaced by something that's actually divine, not just comfortable or familiar. The job you lost that devastated you. It's clearing the way for work that's aligned with your actual purpose, not just your bills. That dream that seemed to die, the one you grieved and eventually accepted, was never going to happen. It's coming back to life, but in a form that's so much better than your original vision that you'll be grateful it didn't work out the way you planned. This is restoration with elevation. This is redemption with purification. Everything that felt lost is being returned but upgraded to match who you've become through the journey. You're not the same person who lost those things, so you can't receive them in the same form. The new version of you requires new versions of your blessings, and that's exactly what's being prepared behind the scenes right now. Better is coming. If you believe this restoration is already in motion in your life. There's a particular kind of energy you're about to become very familiar with, and it's going to feel almost surreal at first because it's so different from what you've known. It's called divine flow, and the best way I can describe it is this: things just start, clicking into place without you having to force them. Doors that were previously locked suddenly swing open, and you didn't even have to knock this time. Opportunities find you instead of you having to hunt them down. People who are meant to be in your life appear at exactly the right moment, as if orchestrated by invisible hands. And instead of feeling like you're pushing a boulder uphill every single day, you feel pulled forward by something greater than yourself. This effortless quality doesn't mean you're not working or taking action. It means your action is aligned with divine rhythm instead of fighting against it. Joseph Murphy called it being in harmony with the infinite intelligence that governs all things. When you're in flow, effort becomes engagement rather than struggle. Work becomes energizing rather than draining. Progress happens naturally because you're finally moving in the direction you were always meant to go, rather than forcing yourself down paths that were never yours to walk. And if you're experiencing this shift right now, even in small ways, pay attention to how radically different it feels from the energy of past seasons. Remember how exhausting it used to be? How you'd work twice as hard for half the results? How every step forward seemed to require superhuman effort, and even then success felt uncertain? That was the struggling energy, the resistance that comes from being out of alignment. But this flow you're entering, this is what happens when divine timing, divine preparation, and divine purpose all converge. You're not fighting the current anymore. You're riding it. Now, let's address something that might still be bothering you. All that time that felt wasted. All those years when it seemed like everyone else was moving forward while you were stuck in place. All those delays and disappointments and detours that made you feel like you were running hopelessly behind schedule. Here's the revelation that will set you free. From that regret, none of it was wasted. Not a single moment. Every delay was deliberate. Every disappointment was divinely orchestrated. Every detour was taking you exactly where you needed to go, even though it didn't look like progress at the time. You weren't running late. You were right on time, being hidden until the perfect moment of revelation. Think about it. If certain things had happened when you originally wanted them to, you wouldn't have been ready. You would have gotten the opportunity but lacked the wisdom to steward it. You would have received the blessing but still carried the trauma that would have destroyed it. You would have stepped into your purpose prematurely and burned out before you'd even begun. The timing that frustrated you was actually protecting you, preparing you, positioning you for something your limited perspective couldn't see yet. And that moment of revelation, the one where everything finally makes sense, where all the pieces suddenly fit together into a coherent picture, that moment is now. You're living in it. Type divine timing is perfect if you're finally seeing how everything was working together for your good all along. Watch what's about to happen. You're going to start experiencing connections that feel almost too perfectly timed to be coincidence. Someone you've never met is going to mention your name in a conversation you weren't part of, in a room you've never entered, and that mention is going to open a door you didn't even know existed. An opportunity that seemed completely impossible, that you'd written off as a fantasy, is going to suddenly materialize out of nowhere. And when it happens, you're going to smile and shake your head in that particular way people do when they recognize divine orchestration at work. Not luck, not networking savvy. Alignment. This is what happens when you've done the inner work and your frequency has shifted to match what you've been asking for. The universe doesn't operate on our timeline or through our limited strategies. It operates through synchronicity, through seemingly random encounters that are anything but random, through connections that make no logical sense, but perfect spiritual sense. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply, that when our subconscious mind is properly impressed with our desire and our worthiness, the outer world rearranges itself to match that inner reality. And that's exactly what's happening for you right now. People who are meant to be part of your next chapter are being moved into position. Resources you need are being gathered behind the scenes. Doors you didn't even know to knock on are being unlocked from the inside. And all of this is happening not because you're manipulating or forcing or hustling yourself into exhaustion, but because you're finally in alignment with your true path. The right connections don't require convincing. They recognize you immediately. They feel inevitable rather than uncertain. And here's where everything shifts into something even more beautiful. You're walking into what I call the effortless yes. You know that feeling when an opportunity comes along and instead of triggering all your anxiety and fear and self-doubt, it just feels right. Like putting on a piece of clothing that was tailored specifically for your body. No forcing, no squeezing, no adjusting, just a perfect fit. That's the effortless yes. These are opportunities that don't make you second-guess yourself for weeks. They don't require you to twist yourself into a pretzel to make them work. They don't demand that you sacrifice your peace or compromise your values or become someone you're not. When these opportunities arrive, you'll feel a deep sense of recognition, like some part of you has been waiting for exactly this. And suddenly all those things that didn't work out, all those no's you received, all those doors that stayed closed, they'll make perfect sense. You weren't being rejected, you were being redirected. Because those opportunities weren't designed for you, they were designed for who you used to be or for someone else entirely. But these new opportunities, they're coded with your name on them. They fit your spirit, your purpose, your unique path in a way that nothing else could. Leave a comment saying, "My yes is coming." If you can feel these divine connections and perfect opportunities aligning for you, let me tell you something you desperately need to hear and permission you need to give yourself. You deserve to rest, not just physically, but in every dimension of your being. You've been operating in fight-or-flight mode for so long that it became your normal state. Your nervous system has been on high alert, scanning for threats, anticipating the next crisis, bracing for impact. And even now that the battle has ended, part of you is still standing guard, still waiting for the other shoe to drop, still unable to fully relax because relaxation feels dangerous after years of needing to stay vigilant just to survive. But the war is over. You can put down your weapons, you can lower your defenses, you can actually enjoy the things you prayed for without guilt, without waiting for them to be taken away, without sabotaging them because some broken part of you doesn't believe you deserve good things. It's okay to laugh again without wondering if you're tempting fate. It's okay to dance, to celebrate, to receive blessings with open hands. Instead of clenched fists, the battle has concluded, and continuing to live like you're still under attack only steals the peace you fought so hard to attain. This is your permission slip. Rest, receive, enjoy. Not because you've earned it through suffering, but because you're a human being worthy of joy simply by existing. The old mindset that said you had to constantly prove your worthiness, that rest was laziness, that enjoying life meant you weren't serious enough, that's survival thinking. And you're not in survival mode anymore, you're in thriving mode. Act like it. Now, as you begin to truly rest and receive, you're going to notice something interesting happening within you. Your spirit is changing what it craves. Conversations that used to engage you now feel empty or draining. Drama that used to pull you in now repels you. Competition that used to motivate you now feels pointless. You find yourself naturally stepping away from chaos, from gossip, from people who are still operating from that survival energy you've transcended. And if you're not careful, you might judge yourself for this, wondering if you've become cold or disconnected or arrogant. But let me be clear. This isn't arrogance. This is ascension. You're not looking down on anyone. You're simply no longer vibrating at the frequency of struggle, and so struggle-based interactions feel misaligned. You've moved from survival energy into creation energy, from reaction to intention, from chaos to consciousness. And when you make that shift, you naturally outgrow environments, conversations, and connections that are still rooted in the old vibration. It's not personal, it's energetic. You can't force yourself to stay interested in things that your soul has evolved beyond any more than you can force yourself back into clothes you wore as a child. You've grown, and growth requires leaving certain things behind, not out of judgment but out of alignment with who you're becoming. Right, I'm ascending. If you recognize these shifts happening in your own preferences and interests right now, here's something profound that's already happening, whether you realize it or not. Everything that once drained you, every wound you carried, every scar you tried to hide, it's all transforming into something useful, not just for you, but for the people who are about to cross your path. Those lessons you learned through heartbreak, they're becoming wisdom. That pain that nearly destroyed you, it's becoming the very thing that helps someone else survive their own destruction. The scars you bear aren't marks of defeat. They're evidence of battles won, and they're about to become your credentials. This is what it means to be chosen. You don't just heal for yourself. You heal so that your healing becomes a roadmap for others who are still lost in the darkness you've already navigated. Your wounds literally become your wings. The very things that weighed you down and kept you grounded now become the source of your flight, your freedom, your ability to rise above and see from a higher perspective. And here's the beautiful part. You don't even have to try to inspire people. You inspire simply by existing, by showing up, by being living proof that light can survive darkness, that wholeness can emerge from brokenness, that there is life after devastation. People are going to look at you and wonder how you're still standing, still smiling, still believing after everything you've been through. And your presence alone will give them permission to keep going through their own trials. This is your assignment, not to be perfect, but to be proof. Proof that transformation is real, that healing is possible, that the storm really does end. Now, as you step fully into this new season, pay very close attention to what starts showing up in your life. You're going to see evidence of divine alignment everywhere once you know what to look for. Unexpected blessings that seem to come out of nowhere. Money showing up exactly when you need it, without you having to stress or scheme. Opportunities that click into place so perfectly, it's almost eerie. People entering your life who feel less like strangers and more like destiny, like you've known them before, like they were sent specifically to be part of your journey. These aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. When divine forces declare something complete, when they announce that your time of struggle has ended and your time of rising has arrived, they don't just say it, they demonstrate it. They give you tangible proof through the sudden shift in your external circumstances. What was stuck starts moving. What was closed starts opening. What felt impossible starts manifesting. And all of it happens with a timing so precise, so perfect, that you can't help but recognize the intelligence behind it. Joseph Murphy spoke about impressing the subconscious mind with your desire. And when that impression is complete, the outer world must conform to the inner conviction. What you're experiencing now is that conforming process in action. Your inner transformation is now reflecting outward in ways you can see, touch, and experience. Comment, "I see the signs," if you're noticing these divine alignment confirmations appearing in your own life. There's something you need to understand right now, and I need you to really hear this. You are not required to shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. You are not obligated to dim your light because it makes insecure people aware of their own darkness. You are not responsible for managing other people's feelings about your growth, your success, your transformation, or your peace. The radiance you're carrying right now, the glow that people can feel even when they can't articulate what's different about you, you earned that. Through every tear, every sleepless night, every moment you chose to keep going when quitting would have been easier. That light is yours, and you have every right to let it shine at full brightness. Some people are going to be uncomfortable with your evolution. They're going to prefer the old version of you, the one who was struggling, the one who was always available to fix their problems, the one who made them feel better about their own stagnation. And when you refuse to play that role anymore, when you step fully into your healed, grounded, spiritually awakened self, they might accuse you of changing, of becoming arrogant, of thinking you're better than everyone else. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility to manage. You're not being arrogant. You're being authentic. You're finally living as your complete self instead of the diminished version you presented to keep the peace. This is the moment where you claim your full identity without apology. Not the identity that was assigned to you by family expectations, societal conditioning, or past trauma, but the identity that's been emerging through all your trials, the one that's been refined in the fire and strengthened through the storms. This version of you doesn't need external validation because you've found internal knowing. This version doesn't chase approval because you've discovered your inherent worth. This version doesn't perform for love because you've learned to give it to yourself first. And here's what makes this moment so significant. You're not just ending an old chapter, you're beginning something entirely new, with divine approval stamped all over it. Your survival story, the one that you thought was just a series of unfortunate events, is transforming into a testimony of divine success. That pain you carried for so long, it's becoming your platform, the foundation from which you'll speak truth and offer hope to people who are still in the valley you've climbed out of. That endless waiting you endured, it's becoming your witness, the evidence that divine timing is real and that nothing is wasted in the economy of the universe. You are exactly on schedule, not behind, not late, not disqualified by your mistakes or delays. The struggle wasn't evidence that you were off track. It was the preparation required for where you're going. And this message, this moment, this sense of recognition you feel deep in your spirit, this is your confirmation that everything is shifting into alignment right now. Right, I'm stepping into my truth, if you're ready to stop shrinking and start shining at your full capacity. If you've made it all the way here to the end, then you know this wasn't just another random video you stumbled across. This was meant for you at this exact moment in your journey, and I want to thank you for trusting me with your time and attention for these minutes we've spent together. That means something. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen and understood in ways that don't happen often, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, because what we're building here isn't just content. It's a community of people who understand that transformation is real, that spiritual growth matters, and that we're all walking each other home in our own way. There's so much more I want to share with you, so many more truths that need to be spoken into the silence where you've been waiting. And leave a comment right now, something simple like, "This message was meant for me," Not for the algorithm, but so I know you were here, so I know this landed where it needed. 2. Sometimes just declaring that you received something shifts the energy even more powerfully. If this spoke to your spirit, hit that like button. It's a small thing, but it tells me we're connected, that what I'm putting out into the world is reaching the people who need it most. And listen, there's another video right here that goes even deeper into what we've been talking about. Click on it and continue with me there. Let's keep this momentum going, because you're just getting started on this next chapter, and I want to walk with you through it. I'll see you in the next one.